Welcome to the Earth-Shaking Conversations podcast. I'm the host, Clarina Paquette. Today, we welcome back David Pointing to the podcast. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me again.
Yeah, no problem. So usually I love to kind of dig deep into people's life. So that's what we're going to do today. So can you start by telling us where you grew up and, where you were born?
Yeah, so I grew up in the UK, specifically in Portsmouth and Southampton. Yeah, two cities on the south coast, like the very south coast of England. They're really close to each other, about 20 kilometers apart, so they're pretty much these days almost connected. But it's I lived like right in the middle between the two. So like where I lived, if you walked out of my street and go to the next street, you would effectively be in the other city. So I was like right on the barrier, and I lived in a bit of Southampton and a bit of Portsmouth, but always within like a couple of kilometers distance from each other. And I grew up there until I was an adult, pretty much. So
interesting. What was your family situation growing up?
say again, sorry.
Like your family situation, like how many siblings did you have?
Okay, so I have two brothers. I've got an older brother who is 3 years older than me, and a younger brother who is 7 years younger than me. My parents, my mum was pretty much a stay-at-home mum. She did childminding mostly when I was growing up, until I was an adult. Really, she was a childminder, and my dad was in the Navy. So he was always away.
And so how was your experience like having a stay-at-home mom? Do you think it like affected your life? Do you think it shaped you for the better?
Honestly, as a kid, I never really made anything of it. I was never like, oh, why do you work in other parents' mums? Why don't you work really in other parents' mums' work? I always thought it was a positive because she always had like children she was childminding my age almost. So like when I was 10, there was a guy called Jonathan who was a good friend of mine. He still is a good friend of mine. And he was like the year above me, but he was born like 3 months before me. So we were pretty much the exact same age, and we were really good friends. And he would come around after school every day, and it would like I'd have a friend after school every day. So it was kind of a bonus for me. It was really good.
Yeah, and how was your dad being away like as well? Do you think it how do you think it affected you in childhood?
Again, like in childhood, it was just a norm because a lot of my childhood, up until I was about 13, we lived in a place called like a Marry Quarter, it's called, which is like military housing. So everybody who lived around me was also military, right? So all of the kids, all of their dads, mostly, it was 99% dads, would be going away for 9 months at a time, and it's kind of just what it was. We're all the same. It wasn't like I'd go somewhere and their dads would be there and my dads weren't. It was always dads were away. So it didn't really make much difference in my childhood. I don't think it negatively affected me. So
Yeah, and how was so you mentioned you had two, I think, brothers, one 7 years
Yep.
younger and one 3 years older.
Yeah.
How was your relationship with them growing up?
Kind of how any brothers would be, I guess. I was never like super close to them. They're brothers, they're kind of like, they're your enemies, but they're also your brothers. So my older brother was like, he was always doing stuff. We didn't really share much interest. He wasn't really interested in sport where I was interested in sport. So he was the cool kid who'd go and hang around the shops, and on a Sunday he'd go out to a field and sit with all his buddies in a field, and I'd be on the other side of the field playing football with my friends. So I didn't really do much with my older brother, and then my little brother was always too little really to do anything with me. So like when I was 10 he was 3, when I was 16 he was 9. So he was always too young to really do anything with me, but like in the house, I had a good relationship with my little brother, and I'm still good friends with him today. So
Oh, nice. Yeah. I don't, well, I have a little sister, but she's only like a year younger, and it was like a constant like cat fight in my house,
yep,
constantly growing up. Me and my sister were at each other's throats, literally, like very, I miss those days.
yeah, I was lucky in that sense that they're like a much different age group. So I didn't really have those issues. The one good thing I had with my older brother was he was in year 11, which is like the last year in the UK school system, and I was in year 7, which is the first year in the last school you go to, so high school. You're there from the age of 11 to 16, and I was there in year 7. He was in year 11, so anytime like there was kids who like bully me on the playground or anything when I was playing football with the older kids, so I was quite good. Like my brother would come over and be like, "Oh, you want to start on him? Like start on me," then sort of thing. So he protected me and stuff, which was nice. But we never really had a rivalry or anything because we were such different ages. So it was good.
Yeah, yeah, no, I totally, I see that. I had a different experience with my sister because
Yeah,
it was so close, and my sister, I don't know, I guess she like always thinks she's in competition with me, so
yeah,
even today she'll like, you know, say stuff, and I'm just like, why are you like this?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so tell me about your teenage years, going to high school.
So my dad left the Navy when I was 13, so he was always at home. And through school, I was either doing three things. I was either at school, I was playing football / soccer, or I was on my Xbox. That's all I did. I had no interest in girls, no interest in shopping, no interest in like camping, no interest in anything. It was football, soccer, Xbox, or I was at school. So I really enjoyed my childhood. A lot of people will be like, "Oh, don't you feel like you missed out?" And I'm like, "Absolutely not." It's like, what would you do more if you had the chance? I'm like, more football and more Xbox. So I really enjoyed my childhood. I've got nothing negative to say about it. It was a great childhood growing up. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. Yeah, me too. I was like, for me, it was cows. I just loved
Yep.
cows. And not the best thing when you're going to school with a bunch of non-farmers, but
Yeah.
I just didn't care about what other
Yep.
people thought. I was like,
Well, yeah, probably similar to you then, because I didn't care about looking cool in school. When it came to shoes, I was like, yeah, whatever ones you want to buy me, mum, they're fine. I wasn't like, oh, I want to wear I want to have the Rockports, which are like the expensive ones, and I want a Helly Hansen jacket because that's what all the kids are wearing. I was just like, yeah, whatever, I don't care. I'm here to be at school because I have to be. And then when I get on the Xbox, I show them who's the boss because I'm the best. So that was always my thing. But
yeah, for me, like I remember conning my mom. My mom wanted me to like buy my own clothes, and I literally told her like, I'm not buying my own clothes. So if you want me to have new clothes, you're gonna have to buy it.
yep.
So all throughout my childhood, I was just banking my money that I made off of my cows and my animals and stuff. And then my mom, she felt like forced to like buy all my clothes because
Yeah.
I wouldn't do it. I was like, too bad, so sad. Like, yeah, it was pretty funny. So, after high school,
Mhm.
what did you do?
So after high school, I went to college, which in the UK system is like the kind of in between school and university. So school in the UK is from 5 to 16, and it's purely school. It is math, science, English, history, geography. There's a little bit of like technology stuff, like wood tech, cooking, but like not really. It's kind of like a side thing. And then at the age of 16, you go to college for 2 years or 3 years, depending, and you kind of learn your like you specify. So you go into, that's when people would go into like plumbing or electronics or whatever, or you'd go into physics and maths, and you'd kind of push that to a level higher than school, ready for university. And I went for internet technology. I wanted to do coding, computer science and stuff. I did that for a year and then went, I really don't like this. This is really boring, sat at a desk all day. So I went into public services, which is kind of getting you ready for being a public servant. So police, fire service, ambulance, and the military. So Air Force, Army, and Navy. And I did public services for 2 years. And yeah, I passed with flying colors.
So after you graduated from college, what did you end up doing?
At the age of, straight after school, I went and just worked in a shop. And I worked there for quite a while, about 7 months. And then I started kind of progressing. And they offered me a kind of management role, which is really weird for like a 19-year-old to get like a management role offered to them. And what they did was they're like, yeah, we're going to train you for 3 months so you can get ready and you can step into it and you know exactly what you're doing, so the older people don't get upset that some guy who doesn't know what he's doing is in charge of them. And I was like, yeah, that's fine. So I did the 3 months, and pretty much 2 days before I was meant to get my contract signed and everything, the manager brought me in the office and he went, I'm really sorry, but management above me have gone over my head and they've given the job to someone else. And I said, okay, in that case, I quit. And I walked out and I never went back. I phoned up the careers office for the military 2 days later, and I joined the Air Force 2 months after that. So I joined the Air Force, in short.
Yeah, so tell me about being in the Air Force.
Yeah, so the military is a really weird place. Like, it's not, I can't explain it in a way that a civilian would fully grasp it unless they've kind of experienced it. Like, you're in a position where they trust you with a rifle and to shoot people, but they don't trust you to have a toaster in your bedroom. You know, you have all of this responsibility and you're lauded as this person who puts their life on the line for Queen and country, or now King and country, but you're not allowed to have a toaster in your room. Every week someone's going to come in and make sure that you've made your bed in the morning and you've vacuumed, you know. Like, it's really weird. Like, you're expected to be this like high functioning soldier, but you're also treated like a 5-year-old child. So yeah, it's a weird one. But it was good. There was really good points to the military. There's really bad points. I always say, like, the best decision I ever made was joining the Air Force, and then the best decision I made after that was leaving. So if I could do it again, I would 100% join again. And I'd do 6 years again, and I'd get out, because it really taught me a lot as a person, but it definitely wasn't the life I wanted to live forever. It wasn't fulfilling in the way I thought it would be.
Yeah, so why do you think why do you think the military treats you like a child, but also, you know, gives you so much responsibility?
I think it's because a lot of the people in the military are children. Like, there's guys on the camp where they're like 42 years old. They've been in 23 years. They've never been promoted. They have zero in savings, you know, and they're just like, you wouldn't trust them to look after your cactus for a weekend. There's a lot in there where they're like, oh, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm just going to like live life to the fullest. You know, every penny or every cent they get is spent every month, and they live life to the fullest. They go out every night. They have loads of fun. They go on loads of holidays. They have a nice car, you know, but they have absolutely nothing to their name, and they just enjoy it. But they're also very irresponsible. There's a lot of very irresponsible people. There's a lot of bad, what's the word, cultures within the military. Like drinking culture is really, really bad. You know, it'll be a Thursday night and everybody will go out and get absolutely plastered. And the next morning they drive to work and you can tell every single one of them is over the limit still. They're all just still drunk. They don't even have hangovers yet. They're still drunk. And then they'll make it through the day and they'll go out again that night and keep drinking. So I guess that's the reason. You can't trust everyone, but you have to be fair. So if you can't trust everyone, you can trust no one, I guess.
Interesting. So, you mentioned that there was some plus and minuses to being in the military. I was wondering if you could touch on those.
Yeah, so in my specific trade, I was a logistics technician. So I was kind of in the supply system, so sending stuff to different places, and you can push your education really far in the military. If you really want, you can go and start your degree, and they'll fully fund your degree whilst you're in. So you can, if you get in there with the intention to use the service to your advantage, there's a lot of advantages to be taken. You can travel a lot. Like I traveled all over the place. I was America, the Falkland Islands, Cyprus, Australia, New Zealand, India, parts of Africa, a lot of Europe, all at the expense of the Air Force. Like I spent 1 week in Bavaria in southern Germany, which is as close as I could get to where I live now in Alberta. Like scenery rise, really nice mountains, like lovely place. And it was amazing. And I just did adventure training there. So I was mountain biking, we did mountain gorge walking, something called Klittersteigen, which is like climbing mountains on little carabiners, and you're like on little wires and stuff. And it was fantastic. And the military pays for all of it. But then at the same time, you have the bad side, where you go away for 6 months to a place where you don't have any internet. You can't text or phone people, and you're stuck in this little dingy room with 3 people, and everyone's depressed and hating life. And everybody else is out drinking, and I don't drink really, so I saw that as a very big negative. But as downsides, other downsides would be constant courses which you have to do. Like I had to do this wiring husbandry course every 6 months, where they tell me not to twist wires and not to stand on wires. Everything is just common sense, and it's like every 6 months I had to do it, and it was just ridiculous. I was like, I know this stuff, but they just make you. It's just courses after courses, which everybody knows, and you just have to keep passing them just so they can tick a little book to say that it's acceptable and you know what you're doing, and they can blame it on you if you do it wrong.
Interesting. So, why did you end up leaving the military?
So, I left the military because of a girl, which kind of gets onto why I'm in Canada as well. Basically, I went on a lad's holiday. I broke up with an ex. I went on a lad's holiday to Vegas. We were like, yeah, boys, let's go to Vegas, It was all of our birthdays were around October time. Well, 5 of our birthdays, well, 1 wasn't, but we brought them along anyway. And we all went out in October, and I met my girlfriend on the night out, the first night out, and I forgot I was on a lad's holiday and kind of had like a little holiday romance with her. And I came home and we kept talking, and eventually we were like, well, let's try and make this work. So we did long distance, and I was like, come over to the UK, you can live in a married quarter with me. We can blah, 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 blah. And then she pretty much said I would, but my sister's just got pregnant, and I don't want to miss being an auntie. And I was like, damn, okay, well, I'll move over to you then. So I put my notice into the Air Force. I went and found out how I could get a visa for Canada, and I moved over.
Was it hard to get a visa to move to Canada?
No. For me, I'm in a lucky position, obviously part of the Commonwealth. They have a an IEC visa, which is International Experience Canada visa. It's the young person's travel visa. That's what most of the people who come over and work on like the ski resorts get. So if you're under the age of 29, there's a load of countries: Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Germany, France, Spain, Italy, Portugal. I believe all of those are part of it. There's loads of other countries as well, where if you're under 29, you can get a 2-year work and travel visa. So you can come over and you're a temporary resident and you can work and travel in Canada and do whatever you want. And then Canada can obviously go the other way, doing that in Australia and the UK and all of that as well. So I used that visa to get across. And then obviously when I moved over, I moved straight in with my girlfriend. And then after a year of living together, we obviously became common law. And through that, she could sponsor me to become a permanent resident. So,
oh, interesting.
We did it that way.
So you're a permanent resident now?
Yes, I'm a permanent resident currently, and soon I'll be applying for my citizenship, so I'll be a Canadian.
Yay. How do you think getting a citizenship is hard in Canada, or?
Say again, sorry?
Sorry, do you think that it's hard to get a citizenship in Canada?
Well, it all depends on your circumstances, right? For me, obviously I've lived here now for just over 3 years. I came over just before COVID started. Literally like a month and a half before COVID started. So I've already lived here for quite a while. But getting citizenship, obviously, you have to be a permanent resident and then have 3 years of living in Canada from the date of your permanent resident being given in the last 5 years. So it's more of a time-based thing for becoming a citizen. And then obviously you have to pass the background checks, make sure you're not a criminal, make sure you don't have loads of other stuff. But I wouldn't say it's too difficult to become a citizen of Canada compared to some other countries.
Yeah, so you said that you moved here right before the pandemic. I'm so sorry for you. I mean, at least you're in Alberta and not in Ontario, because that was pretty brutal. But how were the lockdowns in Alberta?
For me, the lockdowns weren't too bad. Like as I said, when I was younger, I enjoyed playing games. I still enjoy playing games to this day. So for me, it was kind of like I had this wild opportunity where I could get online, and all of my friends from the UK were online, and you know, I would have like this massive friend network, and like my girlfriend would sit online with us, and like we'd just have these chats. Everyone would do quizzes, and I don't know. I had a really good like friend group online. Like the people who don't live their lives like connected to the internet would have really suffered, I feel. Like the ones who always go out for coffees and, you know, like to on a Saturday go down the park and have a picnic and stuff, would really suffer. But for me personally, I was really lucky because I'd obviously moved away from all my friends and we live our lives online. So we kind of, I think it was great. It got a little bit boring towards the end, obviously. But for me personally, I didn't really suffer too much from the lockdowns, but I would have rather them not happen at all, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I definitely suffered big time.
Yeah.
Especially being in Ontario, like it was brutal because I'm an extrovert through and through, and when the lockdowns first happened, it was like 1 week I was going out like 3 times a week, working full time, and then it all stopped, and it was like, oh my God, what am I gonna do with my time?
Yeah.
So yeah, it was brutal, and then it just wouldn't end. That was the worst
like
part.
For me, yeah, like I worked outside just before the COVID like happened, and then when it started happening, obviously I live with my girlfriend and her parents. I'm lucky enough to live with her parents as well. So we have quite a lot of space. We live on an acreage, so we weren't like, I feel sorry for the people who are like locked down to like a flat or an apartment. Like we obviously had a couple of acres where we could go outside and, you know, walk around and still kind of function. And I had to stop my job because obviously nobody knew how bad COVID was when it started, and everyone was a little bit scared. So I quit my job there, and I started streaming online for money, like playing games online. I did that for almost a year, but I found that really depressing as well, because that sort of job, like, it looks really fun, and a lot of kids aspire to do it these days. Like, my little brother was like, oh, I want to be a streamer. I was like, you don't, because it's a very depressing job. But yeah, it was, I don't know, Alberta wasn't too bad. Like, the lockdowns were as short as they needed to be here. They weren't extended out.
Yeah, not in Ontario. Like it was well, it kind of eased up a little bit in the summer of 2020, because like in the summer of 2020, I was everywhere. Like me and my friend, we literally every single weekend we were somewhere camping or doing something, going to a concert, and or maybe that was 2021, not 2020. I did nothing 2020. But yeah, 2021 we were still in a lockdown, so that's why I don't remember much about 2020. But
Yep.
I was, yeah, and I never really stopped my life for the lockdowns. Like I never really listened to them. They used to say like you can't go 50 kilometers away from your house, and I was like at my parents', which like they're like 350 kilometers away from me, and I was like, too bad, so sad. And I also kind of always had like an excuse to do whatever I want because I'm a farmer, so I could just say like, oh, I'm going to milk, or I'm gonna go help my dad calve
where you
or
work.
something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I definitely had some excuses, but no one really, like, the police officers just didn't do anything, like didn't care. So no one like was stopped.
Most of them thought it was ridiculous as well. The lockdowns.
Yeah. And what was really, really surprising about the lockdowns in Ontario is that, you know, we voted in a conservative government, and I was a fan of Ford when he first came in, and oh boy, I'm no longer a fan.
Yeah, Ford really showed his colors during the lockdown. He wasn't great. He was not great.
Yeah. Yeah, it was bad. So what do you do now?
Okay, so now I started a construction subcontracting company. So I subcontract exterior finishing, so vinyl, hardy, finishing. So I kind of just finish off houses on the outside, do repairs for hail damage, and yeah, it's kind of what I do at the moment.
Oh yeah, cool. Like, do you have any employees at that?
Not currently. Originally I was meant to go into business with someone, but when it came to actually doing it, I think he got cold feet, didn't want to invest the money, didn't want to buy the equipment. So, I offered to buy the equipment and obviously take a little bit more of the company. I asked for 55% instead of 45% when I paid for all the equipment, and he thought I was trying to scam him, which I definitely wasn't. I always wanted to go into business with him, so that kind of fell apart. So I'm kind of working on my own at the moment. I may be working with someone in the new year. We might be kind of working together with our two separate companies, but taking on the same contracts together and kind of working as a pair. But my plan is to hire someone in the next year, like June, July sort of time. Hopefully get one person then, and then hopefully pick someone up again in October, November time, and have a couple of people underneath me, and then slowly build up the company from there. But it's still early days.
That's awesome. And what have you learned from being a company owner, or since becoming a company owner?
Well, the one thing I've learned since starting fully on my own is I will never, as long as it's possible, never work for somebody else again. I'll never become an employee again, because the benefits you have from being your own boss and the freedom it gives you is just too good to give up. You know, when you wake up and you're like, oh, yeah, I fancy an extra hour in bed, and you can just have it, you know, or, you know, it's like, you'd be like, oh, I really wanted Monday off because I wanted to do this. So you're like, well, I'll just work the Saturday instead then. And you just have this flexibility to just do what you want when you want. And then you have all of the financial benefits as well. Like, even if you make less money as a self-employed person, you make more money because you can save so much money on certain things. So, for example, now my vehicle, which I drive, is now a work vehicle because I use it for work. So I can get cheaper insurance, which I can write off against my earnings. So that's cleared pre-tax. I just changed my phone bill over. That was a big one. I was paying $90 a month for my phone bill. Now I pay $105 a month for mine and my girlfriend's phone bill. And we get 100 gigabytes of data each, and we get $105 a month between us. It's crazy how much benefit you get from being self-employed and a business owner. And I would recommend anyone who has an opportunity to do that is to go after it, because whilst you're working for somebody else, you're not going to be working for yourself. And that was something I was told when I was going into it, and it's something I can only repeat, really. It's a really important thing for me, is making less money for yourself is better than making more money for someone else.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I work a 9 to 5 right now, like in corporate, which is fine
Yep.
because it does give me a lot of flexibility, but at the same time I'm also building my company, and sometimes I'm like, oh my God, this is like pretty difficult having to do both at the same time, right? But
100%.
it's like, when are you gonna take that step to going fully for yourself? Because right now I can't, because it's so new. But yeah, that's gonna be a difficult decision whenever that time comes, to make that decision.
Yeah, well, the best time, or in my opinion anyway, the best time to make that decision is when your job begins to get in the way of your business, right? So when you don't have enough time to do your business and your job, that's the time when you have to make the change. But obviously it's different for every person, and every person has to work out, one, when it makes most sense for them personally and financially, obviously.
Yeah, for sure. Because you still need to live. I would love to just do my business, but it just right now not really feasible. But hopefully in the near future it starts becoming a little bit more feasible. But yeah, so you got on TikTok a few months ago, and that's how we met. Tell me why you started it and what you're trying to do.
Yeah, so originally when I was on TikTok, I used to make like fitness content. It was kind of just like it was a personal log for like me going to the gym. And then eventually one day I was scrolling through, and obviously the algorithm was giving me stuff, and this guy was making a comment, and he was from Ontario, and he was making a comment about Alberta, and it was completely wrong. And I was just like, wait, I'm just going to call this guy out. I don't care. And I called this guy out, and the kind of video just went like insane. It got like 150,000 views in like 7 hours, a couple of thousand comments, like 10,000 likes. I was like, oh. And I was like, people are like, wow, man, a lot. Like, it's crazy that you know more about like Alberta than Canadians do, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, oh. I was like, well, yeah, I kind of like politics. And I was like, well, if I see anything else, I call it out as well. So a couple of days later, I saw something else, called it out, and people were like, yeah, blah, blah, blah. We need more people like you on here. And I was like, okay, well, I guess the people want me. So I just started making more content, and yeah, I tried like on TikTok, I try to be as honest as possible. I don't change my viewpoint to fit a narrative or my side of the fence. I'll always be as fair as possible, and I'll always be honest in my approach. And I think that's important, because a lot of people will get on and then they'll just kind of have their side, and then even if they don't fully agree with it, they'll kind of put across the viewpoint that they do fully agree with it. And I think that's detrimental to society as a whole, when you have people who will just sit with something just because that's their viewpoint, and they won't open themselves up for discussion or to actually have like real discourse. They'll just parrot whatever their side says, and that's what they believe fully, and that's what they parrot. And I just think that's detrimental.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that. TikTok is like an echo chamber, in my opinion. Like, it really brings out either the best or the worst. And I'd like to think it brings out the best in me, but sometimes I wonder, because, you know, when you start getting high amount of followers and like likes and stuff, it gets really addicting, in my opinion. Like, I felt it, where, you know, I've taken a bit of a step back now, which is weird because like my account is growing more, but before I was like posting 5 times a day about how much Justin Trudeau sucks, and it was like, you know, sometimes I need to take a step back and be like, okay, what am I actually trying to accomplish here? Like, I don't just want to be spewing hate, even if it's towards Justin Trudeau, which I don't like. But
yeah, so like, yeah, I completely agree with that. I try to stay away from opinion based stuff. So, you know, like, if Justin Trudeau does something in particular, I'll call him out. But I won't be the person on here being like, yeah, Justin Trudeau is this and he's that, and I believe he's like this, and I believe he did that, and I believe this, and I believe that. It's like, unless there's evidence to support it, I won't speak about it, because anytime that it's just a rumor or hearsay, when you start talking about that stuff and then it comes out that it's not right, it just makes you look uninformed. It makes you look bigoted, in my opinion, and it makes you look like you're just trying to make someone look bad because somebody else said something, and instead of you doing your own research to find out if it's true, you're just saying it as well, which means you're just as uninformed as the other people. So I'll always try, anytime I read something, the first thing I do before I get emotional or react to it is go onto Google and actually try and find evidence of it. Like the other day I had, I can't even remember what his surname is, but Josh, he's some nut job on TikTok, and he was like, yeah, the First Nations own everything under 6 inches under the ground, from one of the packs. And I went onto Google and I could not find any evidence for it at all. And I was like, okay, where's this guy got it from? So I asked him for a source, and then he goes, oh, do you not heard of Google? And I was like, yeah, I have. I tried to find it. I couldn't find it. Can you find it for me? And he comes back, no, I'm not going to do your research for you. You're just an idiot. And I was like, well, clearly this is a lie then, because nobody else could find it. Like 5 to 10 people also commented, like, we can't find anything on this. Where'd you get it from? And those sort of people who were just, they probably read it somewhere or heard it somewhere from someone else, and they're like, this is fact, you know. And it's just like, it's not. It's the same way as when you talk about a vaccine, going to go to vaccines, but when they said, oh, it stops transmission, it doesn't. You know, the evidence is there now. All of the documentation is there. They no longer says that it stops transmission. They say it reduces transmission, which is completely different. And people still believe that it stops transmission. And I was having an argument with someone today. Oh, this stops transmission. I was like, it doesn't. It reduces transmission. They're like, yeah, exactly. It stops transmission. I'm like, it's completely different. Completely different. But, you know.
Yeah, no, TikTok is interesting. Like, I have to sometimes check myself and be like, am I posting this because of, like, you know, the views? Because I know it's going to get a lot of views and a lot of, like, interaction. Or am I, like, sometimes I, like, you know, you start getting into that level where it's like, you really have to think to yourself, like, what am I doing? Like I don't know. I feel like I'm having an existential crisis every day on TikTok. It's like
Yeah.
because it's so like there's so much stuff in your face, you know, so many
Hmm.
opinions, and then every single video, like there's at least one person who's gonna say you're like the worst, and I'm like, okay, like it could be like
Yeah.
the best video, and there's someone that's gonna try to like just bring you down, and then like I posted a video the other day about I think it was like the monopoly of grocery stores, and like some people were like,
Oh yeah,
no,
defending
there's
grocery
not a
stores.
sorry.
Yeah, like they'll come out and they'll be defending grocery stores because they don't just they know you're conservative, they know you're right wing, and then instantly they'll be like, no, there's not a monopoly on grocery stores, you know, because 5 years ago liberals hated big pharma, but look at them now, they're like, no, Pfizer are great, Moderna's great. It's just like, how did you flip from like hating big pharma to like completely backing them? You know, it's crazy how quickly somebody will flip their viewpoint because the government's narrative has completely changed, and they'll just completely flip. Because that's one thing I always said when like the COVID thing was happening. I was like, what would have happened if Trump was in power? I always think this. I'm like, what would have happened if Trump won the re-election? Like, would it be conservatives trying to push vaccines on people? And I'm like, that never would have happened. People would always say, like, we're not going to take this. And the liberals wouldn't want to take it anyway because the conservatives are pushing it. So it's like, I'd really love to, like, see, like, if it was possible to, like, see the alternate universe where Trump was in power and his government was trying to be like, go out and get vaccinated. You know, what would have happened? It would have been so weird.
I think like Health Canada wouldn't have approved it personally. Like,
Oh, they wouldn't. They wouldn't because, like, I don't think Trump would have pushed the FDA into it. Because, like, you remember Kamala Harris was one of the prime people where she was like, yeah, I'm not gonna take this vaccine just because Trump says it's safe. I want to see full evidence that it's safe. You know, and then suddenly they get into power, and a month later they're like, "Yeah, this is safe. Take it. Go on, come on, let's go." And it was just like just the flip instant because I guess she was on the way of making money from it. And it was just it's crazy to me how people will just side with the politician they choose and just believe everything, and it's kind of scary. It's scary how well people are programmed.
yeah, like there's definitely people who, you know, are aligned. And in Canada, and I don't know about Britain if they're like that too, but in Canada I've noticed like there's diehard liberals. It does not matter if Justin Trudeau could literally go out and shoot someone on the street and they would still vote liberal. Like there's nothing that he can do.
Yeah, 100%.
But it's the same with conservatives. Like I used to work for a guy and he told me like I would never vote anything other than conservative, and I was like, really? Like, okay, I know the conservatives are good right now. Like I'm supporting them right now, but if they did something I didn't agree with, or if they did a radical turn like the left did in the last 10 years, like I'd be like, bye-bye conservatives, like, you know. And he told me, he's like, no, I'm always gonna vote conservative. It doesn't matter. I'm never gonna change. And it's like, why are people like this? You know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of scary. Like right now, I don't see an alternative to the Conservative Party in Canada. But I feel there needs to be a big change in the federal government. Because right now it's either you're extreme left, you're mid left, or you're pretty far right. And there needs to be someone more central. And I think if a party goes central, they'll pick up a lot of votes. But right now, there's no party which looks like they're going to go anywhere near the center. So it's either left, extreme left, or right at the moment.
Yeah, I don't even know if I consider Pierre Poilievre to be super right. I think, like, I don't know. I haven't seen his policies yet. He hasn't really come out with any policies,
released any.
But he's very like the right in Canada, I guess it's more right than we've had in the last 2 years, which I actually think it's a good thing, because having two liberal conservatives wasn't a good strategy to win elections. But I think that like he's very like he's pro-choice. He's he's like a libertarian conservative. I would describe him.
Yep. Yeah.
And
Like I really like his policies on like kind of standing back. Like he doesn't want to be big government, and he's like, I want to build more homes. How am I going to build more homes? I'm going to make it so the government's not standing in the way of developers building more homes. And it's just like, great, that's what we need, and it's good that what he's saying sounds good, but whether he actually comes out with a decent platform when elections come around, and he actually stands by his words is another thing to be seen. There's a lot of politicians out there who sound really good, but don't really do much. Barack Obama was a prime example of that. He was one of the most like well-spoken, believable, charismatic people ever in politics. You want to sit down and have a conversation with someone like Barack Obama is a great guy to sit down and have a conversation with. But when it comes to actually leading and his policies, he was kind of all over the place and didn't really do much. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what Poilievre does, but it's early days and I don't trust him. I'll say that. Like, he sounds good, but there's got to be some proof in the pudding. There's got to be a little bit of following through on his word before I can really trust him.
Yeah. Like my opinion about Poilievre is, obviously I like the guy. I have like literally his sign on my fridge, and my dad has, but we're not like die hard like Poilievre fans. We just have his sign on my fridge. But the thing is, like, after the 7 years of Trudeau, it's so hard to trust any politician. And Trudeau, he talks a lot about because one of Canada's big mottos, or it used to be, was good government, and Trudeau uses that, and he's abused that, right? He's abused that motto for his own gain, saying, well, because the Constitution says good government, or the motto of Canada says good government, I don't even know where it is, but that must mean that we're a good government. And he's really, really destroyed Canadian politics. Like, I've been in politics since I was 8 years old, so I'm 23 now, so 15 years. And I've never seen as much damage to the politics than the last 3 years. Like,
oh yeah,
like living under Stephen Harper.
I think on a global scale, though, politics in the last, like, since COVID started, politics have become like so extreme. It's crazy. Like, you look at the UK government, the Conservative Party in the UK have absolutely taken that country to its knees.
Oh my god, yeah.
It is criminal what they're doing over there. And it's the same with the Liberals here. But the Liberals here are making it seem a lot better than it actually is. Because obviously, when it comes to the G7 and representing numbers on inflation and stuff, each country decides how they use their data to create their figures. And the Liberals are very smart, and they remove a lot of stuff. So it doesn't make like their inflation look that bad. Like, they use fuel costs pre-tax, so they don't account for costs with the new carbon tax or the tax and stuff. So they only look at the actual price they're paying for the fuel. So how much the oil company is charging the petrol station, and how much money the petrol station is making profit on the consumer. That's all they use, instead of using the price that it was 3 years ago and the price it is today, which is a big difference. So they're very smart on how they do it, and they're very devious. But yeah, it's the Canada is in a bad bad spot right now. Very bad spot.
Yeah. And, I was listening to a speech of Trudeau basically rebutting Pierre Poilievre's speech, saying that, Pierre Poilievre said Canada's broken, and I fully agree with him. Like, Canada is broken. You look at the MAID policies, you look at the homelessness. I went to Toronto for a concert, and I've never seen this before. I've been to Toronto quite a bit, and there's tents on Bay Street. And maybe I just
Oh, yeah.
haven't been there in the winter, but I've never actually seen that before, ever in my life. And I've been to Toronto, like, I don't know, like 20 times to Bay Street, like, and I've never seen,
Yep.
like, tents just lined up on Bay Street. And that's, like, if you know Toronto, like, it's the street, right? It's, like, the street of Toronto.
Yeah, I've never been to Toronto, but I've seen videos from Vancouver, where literally, like, there is streets upon streets upon streets of people on the streets now. And obviously last night, we postponed. From last night, I went to a charity food drive concert for the Okotoks Food Bank, which is like my local town. I live just below Calgary. And they were saying there that 1 in 15 families had accessed food banks in the last month in Okotoks, which is 7% of the population are in food poverty at the moment in Okotoks. And Okotoks is quite a prosperous town, I would say. It's a higher earning town. It's not like a low earning town. Most people here are like in quite good jobs. It's where you move when you don't want to be in the city anymore, but you still travel to Calgary to work, sort of thing. So, but 1 in 15 families, 7% are in food poverty, and it's kind of scary. Like, you would never have thought that would happen in Alberta, but it is. It's bad.
Yeah, it's so bad. And like a lot of these policies, like I was watching someone tweeted about the fertilizer tariffs. Apparently this is like a tweet that I saw from like a professor of food or something like that. All of the tariffs did not affect Russia at all. It was basically collected off of the back of Canadian farmers. And guess what they're doing with that money now? They're sending
Giving
it
to Ukraine.
To Ukraine.
Yeah.
I can't.
I saw it was like 650 million recently went there. Like, this whole Ukraine Russia thing is getting to the point where you have to help the individuals in Ukraine. And I fully support giving asylum across Europe, across America, across Canada for Ukrainians who want to get out of the country. But at the same time, it's not our war. And we have to step back, because all it's doing is negatively affecting the whole world. The whole world is suffering because, as always, America and NATO want to put their big boy pants on and get involved in a war which isn't theirs.
Yeah, and I would argue that America, specifically the Democrats, have been wanting a war with Russia for quite some time, at least since Trump got in. Because I don't know if you remember this, but in 2016, anything and anyone who liked Trump or who remotely agreed with Trump was labeled a Russian asset
spy,
to Putin.
Yeah.
And Trump was labeled that himself. And I have Russian friends, and I know a lot of people who are Russian, and I'm kind of scared for them because we have this such hate for Russians, and Putin, I don't agree with him invading another country, but at the same time, why are we bankrupting our country? First of all, every single country is being bankrupted by Ukraine. And where is this money going? This is the other thing. I think it was in the US where the Republicans are trying to get an audit and they're only able to account for 10% of the money that is sent to Ukraine. So where is that money? Why are we sending all this money if it's not even getting there?
Yep. Yeah, like they were saying that it was like most of the arms, like the munitions, the ammo, and the weapons, they'd get across the border and then it'd disappear, and there's no traceability for them. And it's just like, why are we sending weapons and then having no idea where they're going? It's crazy. The whole situation's crazy. I called it from the start. I said, like, if NATO gets involved, it's just going to be a huge, dragged out situation, because Russia won't stomp them. Russia can stomp them. This is the big thing. When people like talk about it and they're like, "Oh yeah, Russia, like look at them, they're on their knees, their military's on their knees." I'm like, they haven't even used their military. Like, this is Russia. This is the country who literally just sent millions of people like running at the Germans in World War II. Like, they have so many supplies. If they wanted to, they could just fly over Ukraine tomorrow and just carpet bomb the whole country. They could do it. They won't do it because that's seen as a war crime now. But it's crazy that people are like, yeah, the Ukrainians, they're not going to get beaten. It's like, Ukraine has, what's their population, like 45 million?
I don't even know.
43.8 million people. 43.8 million people. And they were losing thousands of people a day. They can't go on forever and ever, right? And Russia can. Like, the Russian ruble's the best it's ever been. Like, it's their economy is booming right now. But everyone's like, oh yeah, their economy's in the dump. And I'm like, it's really not. They're still exporting oil. They're just exporting it to Asia, and they're making the Asians buy Russian rubles to buy the oil with. So their currency is like in high demand. And now you've got Europe on its knees. Germany using coal fire plants to power generators. It's the whole world is on its knees because America and Europe won't get out of a war that they're not really involved in, and it's so detrimental to the world.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's intentional. Like, it doesn't make sense that people would intentionally bankrupt countries just for Ukraine. Like, and what actually gets me the most is like the people with the Ukraine flags in their bios, like, and they just like fiercely like love that country. And I'm like, you guys didn't even know about Ukraine before Ukraine got invaded. Like, let's be honest here, you know. And they're just so passionate. But like, for me, when Ukraine first started, honestly, like, I knew Ukraine was gonna get invaded after Trump lost. Like, I predicted it. Taiwan is going to get invaded by China probably this winter or next winter. Like, I knew this, especially after the Afghanistan withdrawal with Biden. I knew it. I was like, there's no way he's not going to invade. Like, that's so stupid. Like, there's such a weak leader in the U.S. and all around the world. But, like, the U.S. is the leading superpower. Of course he's going to invade. Like, duh. And then they invaded 2 days after, you know, Trudeau descended on the Freedom Convoy protesters. And I actually, like, did not even care about Ukraine. Like, everyone was like, oh my God, like, you know, do you care about Ukraine? And I was like, no, I didn't even cover it for like a good 5 months on TikTok, because I was like, I'm not going to sit here and after the media lied about the Freedom Convoy for literally like 6 or 4 weeks, and then turn around and be like, oh yeah, like, I'm going to get my news from you guys for the Ukraine thing. And there's just so many anomalies. Like, I don't know. I saw through Zelensky, like, right away. I was like, hey, why are these people fawning over him? And it just looked so fake. And it was fake. A lot of the footage...
he was using green screens and stuff. It was like, it was a political propaganda masterclass, really, because they were propping him up to be this war hero, when I'm still not sure if he's even in Ukraine anymore. And he, over the course of the last couple of, like this year, he's banned other political parties. You know, he's stomping on political rights across the whole country, and he's being propped up by the Western governments now, and they're declaring him democratic, and in reality, he's a fascist leader. He's stopped the ability for other parties to have any chance of pushing him out. And he keeps asking for more money, and we keep giving it to him, and it's just it's crazy. Like,
and they banned the church. Did you hear that?
They did what? Sorry.
They banned the church, the Orthodox Church. They like completely banned it in Ukraine. I was like, so much for freedom and democracy, you know?
I did not hear about that. But that's kind of crazy.
Yeah, like, you know, it's honestly like I don't even know what to think when it comes to Ukraine, because it's like, to me seems like, first of all, Canada, like, let's talk about Canada for a minute. Canada is a peacemaking country, okay? This is what we've been since World War II. We go in without arms for whatever reason, and we try to make peace. Why are we not doing this with Ukraine? This is what I don't understand, is like, you know, my whole childhood when we were learning about history and stuff, we were always told Canadian, like the Canadians were like peacemakers, you know, like we're like negotiators. We try to bring peace to the war, but yet we're sending like almost billions of dollars to Ukraine, and for what like, we're literally not even doing what we're supposed to do, which is negotiating.
Yeah, I personally believe the main reason for that is because our leadership's weak. You know, 5 years ago, you had Donald Trump, who, what he said, he meant. You know, he didn't mess about with his words. You know, he said to like North Korea, he's like, "You want to start something? Let's start something. Like, I'll destroy your country in 10 hours," or whatever it was he said. You know, the same with like ISIS. He was like, "You want to go for it? Let's go for it. We could destroy your country in 10 minutes." And then they quickly like came to like some agreements with Trump because they knew Trump wasn't messing about. Whereas Biden's just, he's so weak. Like, you can't take the guy seriously. And Putin knows he can push. You know, and he just keeps pushing. And he's proven here, like, he can keep pushing. And Russia's exports are natural resources. They're not going anywhere. You know, it's not like China, where if you're like, "Oh yeah, China, we're not going to do any deals with you anymore. We're going to turn it off," and then China like falls to its knees because all they do is like production. It's like Russia's like, "Okay, well, come and let us know when you need the oil because we know you need it." So it's scary.
It is, and Biden. I mean, I don't even think about Biden because he's not the one running the country. Like, he has dementia. His handlers are the ones that are the problem. Like, I don't even know who handles that guy. That's what I've been wondering, because it's not Kamala Harris, because she's as stupid as she is.
Pelosi does a lot of it.
Yeah.
Nancy Pelosi does a lot of it. In a lot of his interviews, he'll be sat there and they'll be like, "Oh, we're going to ask some questions," and then Pelosi will be like, "No, we're not going to do that." And he's like, "Okay, no questions, bye." You know, so, yeah.
Yeah, Pelosi. Yeah, I think, I don't know. Like, I've always thought Obama might be behind it too. There's like a possibility he might be behind it, but I don't know. Like, it's really hard to tell who's in charge of the country, because it's not Biden, it's not Kamala Harris, it's not either of those two. So I guess maybe Pelosi, and yeah,
the whole thing's just a mess.
Yeah, so I'm going to end it here. So thank you so much for coming
Okay.
back on my podcast. So where can we find you?
At the moment, just on TikTok. I'm Alberta Immigrant on TikTok. That's all I use for now for social media.
Yeah, and of course I will tag your links in the description as usual. And yeah, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me. Been good.